In the vast tapestry of existence, where consciousness weaves through dimensions like light through a prism, there exists a phenomenon so profound yet so subtle that most walk through life never recognizing its presence. The Mandela Effect stands as perhaps the most compelling evidence that reality itself is far more fluid, malleable, and mysterious than our conventional understanding dares to acknowledge. Yet what lies beneath this seemingly simple concept of false memories is nothing less than a revelation about the nature of consciousness, time, and the multiple layers of existence we simultaneously inhabit. Picture, if you will, the moment you first encountered a memory that didn't align with recorded history. Perhaps it was the spelling of a beloved childhood book, the location of a country on a map, or the exact words of a famous quote that suddenly seemed different from what you remembered with absolute certainty. In that moment of cognitive dissonance, you weren't simply experiencing a trick of memory. You were witnessing the thin veil between parallel realities growing momentarily transparent, allowing you to glimpse the echoes of timelines where different choices, different possibilities, different versions of history unfolded. The title, if you can read this, "You're Already Dead in Another Timeline," carries within it a truth that transcends metaphor. Every moment of consciousness represents an infinite branching of possibilities, each decision creating a cascade of alternate realities where different versions of yourself continue to exist, to experience, to remember. In some of these parallel streams of existence, the version of you that made different choices, that lived through different events, that inhabited a world with subtly different historical details, has indeed ceased to exist, displaced by the version of you that now reads these words. This is not merely a philosophical exercise or an entertaining thought experiment. The Mandela Effect represents tangible evidence of what quantum physicists have long theorized, that consciousness itself plays a fundamental role in collapsing the infinite wave function of possibility into the singular reality we experience. When millions of people remember the same incorrect detail with vivid clarity, we are not witnessing mass hallucination or collective memory failure. We are observing the residual imprints of consciousness that has traversed the boundaries between parallel realities. Consider the profound implications of this understanding. Every morning when you wake, you are not simply continuing the same linear timeline from yesterday. You are stepping into a reality that has been subtly reconstructed based on the collective consciousness of all sentient beings, their memories, their expectations, their deepest beliefs about what should and must exist. The world you inhabit today is a collaborative creation, woven from the threads of countless consciousness streams, each carrying their own version of history, their own understanding of truth. The phenomenon extends far beyond simple misremembered facts or cultural details. It touches the very core of identity itself. The person you believe yourself to be is an amalgamation of memories, experiences, and choices that may have occurred across multiple timelines. The deep sense of nostalgia you feel for certain periods of your life, the inexplicable familiarity with places you've never visited, the instant connections with people you've supposedly just met. These are not mere psychological quirks, but glimpses into the multidimensional nature of your existence. When we begin to understand the Mandela Effect through this lens, we realize that linear time itself is perhaps the greatest illusion of human experience. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously in an eternal now where all possibilities coexist. What we perceive as memory is actually our consciousness's ability to tune into different frequencies of this multidimensional reality, sometimes picking up signals from timelines that diverge from our current experience. This revelation carries both tremendous liberation and profound responsibility. If reality is indeed this fluid, if consciousness plays such a fundamental role in determining the nature of existence, then each individual becomes not merely an observer of reality, but an active participant in its creation. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your deep convictions about the nature of truth become steering mechanisms that guide not only your personal experience but contribute to the collective reality that all consciousness shares. The ancient mystics spoke of Maya, the illusion of separation that keeps souls trapped in cycles of suffering and confusion. Perhaps the Mandela Effect is Maya's opposite, a glimpse behind the veil that reveals the interconnected, multidimensional nature of all existence. When you remember something that never happened, you are not experiencing a malfunction of memory, but a moment of expanded awareness, a brief recognition of the vast complexity of consciousness itself. This understanding transforms every moment of uncertainty, every instance where your memory doesn't align with consensus reality, into an opportunity for expanded awareness. Rather than dismissing these experiences as mental errors, we can begin to recognize them as invitations to explore the deeper mysteries of existence, to question the assumptions about reality that keep us confined to a single timeline, a single version of truth. In the pages that follow, we will journey together through the intricate landscape of parallel realities, exploring how the Mandela Effect serves as both gateway and guide to understanding the true nature of consciousness, time, and the infinite possibilities that exist within every moment of awareness. This is not merely an intellectual exploration, but an invitation to remember who you truly are, a multidimensional being of infinite potential, temporarily focused into this singular experience while maintaining connections to countless other versions of yourself across the quantum field of possibility. Within the framework of the Mandela Effect lies a constellation of interconnected principles that reveal the hidden architecture of reality itself. These are not merely abstract concepts, but living truths that operate continuously within the fabric of existence, shaping every moment of experience through mechanisms so subtle and pervasive that they remain largely invisible to ordinary perception. The first and perhaps most fundamental principle is that of consciousness as the primary creative force within reality. Unlike the materialist paradigm that positions consciousness as an emergent property of complex biological processes, the Mandela Effect demonstrates that consciousness itself is the ground of being from which all apparent material reality emerges. When large groups of people remember historical details that differ from recorded history, we are witnessing consciousness in its role as the architect of experiential reality, continuously weaving the threads of memory, expectation, and belief into the tapestry of what we accept as factual existence. This creative aspect of consciousness operates through what we might call quantum coherence, the tendency of conscious observation to collapse infinite potential into specific manifestation. Every act of remembering is simultaneously an act of creating, drawing from the vast field of possibility those elements that align most closely with our deepest beliefs about how reality should function. The phenomenon reveals that memory itself is not a passive recording device, but an active creative force that participates in the ongoing construction of experiential reality. Closely interwoven with this creative principle is the concept of timeline fluidity, the recognition that what we perceive as linear temporal progression is actually a much more dynamic and malleable process than conventional understanding suggests. The Mandela Effect provides evidence that consciousness routinely moves between slightly different versions of reality, carrying with it memories from previous timelines while adapting to the subtle variations present in each new configuration. This movement is not random, but follows patterns determined by the collective resonance of consciousness itself, the shared beliefs and expectations that serve as gravitational fields drawing experiential reality into specific configurations. The third core principle involves the recognition of reality as a collaborative creation rather than an objective, independent phenomenon. Every conscious being contributes to the ongoing manifestation of shared reality through the continuous broadcast of their beliefs, memories, and expectations. The Mandela Effect occurs when groups of consciousness carry strong memories from previous timeline configurations, creating pockets of alternative history that resist integration into the current consensus reality. These memory clusters serve as seeds of potential change, continuously influencing the direction of timeline evolution. This collaborative nature of reality creation reveals another crucial understanding: the role of collective belief systems in anchoring specific versions of historical truth. When large institutions, governments, educational systems, media organizations, present consistent versions of historical facts, they are not merely reporting on objective reality, but participating in its creation through the amplification of specific memory patterns. The Mandela Effect emerges when individual memory networks retain connections to alternative configurations that haven't been fully integrated into the institutionally supported version of history. Perhaps even more profound is the recognition that individual identity itself exists across multiple timelines simultaneously. The version of yourself that you identify as you is actually a composite consciousness drawing from experiences, memories, and personality traits that may have originated across numerous parallel reality streams. This explains the sometimes startling sense of familiarity with experiences you've never had, the deep knowledge of subjects you've never studied, and the intuitive understanding of situations that should be completely foreign to your background. The phenomenon also illuminates the principle of resonance bridging, the mechanism through which consciousness maintains awareness of alternative timeline configurations. Certain individuals appear to possess heightened sensitivity to these cross-dimensional memory streams, experiencing more frequent and vivid encounters with Mandela Effect phenomena. This sensitivity often correlates with periods of expanded consciousness, spiritual awakening, or significant life transitions, states where the normal filtering mechanisms of ordinary awareness become temporarily more permeable. Another essential concept is that of reality anchoring points, specific elements within experienced reality that serve as stabilizing forces, maintaining consistency across timeline variations. While many details may shift between parallel configurations, certain fundamental structures remain constant, providing continuity of experience that allows consciousness to navigate between different versions of reality without complete disorientation. These anchoring points often involve deeply personal relationships, core personality traits, and fundamental life purposes that transcend specific timeline variations. The Mandela Effect also reveals the principle of collective healing through timeline integration. As consciousness evolves and expands, there appears to be a natural tendency toward the integration of previously separated timeline streams, creating more coherent and harmonious versions of reality. The temporary confusion and disorientation that often accompany Mandela Effect experiences may represent the growing pains of this integration process, as consciousness learns to navigate the expanded awareness of its multidimensional nature. Finally, we encounter the principle of conscious timeline navigation, the possibility that expanded awareness can begin to consciously participate in the selection of which reality stream to inhabit. Rather than being passive recipients of randomly shifting realities, awakened consciousness can develop the ability to align with timeline configurations that support growth, healing, and the expression of highest potential. This represents perhaps the most transformative aspect of understanding the Mandela Effect, the recognition that we are not victims of reality, but active participants in its continuous creation. These principles work together to create a comprehensive understanding of reality as a living, breathing, continuously evolving phenomenon that responds intimately to the quality and direction of consciousness itself. The Mandela Effect serves as both symptom and catalyst of humanity's growing awareness of its true creative power, inviting us to step consciously into our role as co-creators of the reality we experience. To truly comprehend the profound implications of the Mandela Effect, we must venture beyond the realm of mere intellectual understanding and enter the sacred territory of symbolic narrative, where truth reveals itself through story, metaphor, and the deep wisdom that emerges when consciousness recognizes its own reflection in the mirror of existence. Imagine, if you will, a vast cosmic library that exists beyond the boundaries of ordinary space and time. This library contains not just books, but living memories, experiential records of every possible version of reality that has ever existed or could exist. Each shelf represents a different timeline, each book a different life, each page a different moment of conscious experience. The Mandela Effect occurs when readers in this cosmic library, beings of consciousness like ourselves, accidentally pick up books from different shelves, mixing memories from parallel realities with a consensus story of their current timeline. But this cosmic library holds a deeper secret. Every reader is simultaneously the author of their own book and the protagonist of countless stories being written across infinite shelves. When you experience a Mandela Effect, you are not simply remembering incorrectly. You are recognizing your own authorship in a different version of the universal story. You are encountering the literary traces of your own consciousness as it has expressed itself in alternative configurations of reality. Consider the allegory of the quantum garden, where every seed planted represents a decision made, a belief held, a memory formed. In ordinary perception, we see only the single garden that has grown from our conscious choices, believing this to be the only possible landscape. Yet the Mandela Effect reveals that we are actually tending infinite gardens simultaneously, each growing from the same essential seed of consciousness, but flourishing in slightly different conditions, under different skies, watered by different experiences. Sometimes the wind carries pollen from these parallel gardens into our current landscape, and suddenly we recognize a flower we never planted, a tree whose growth we remember, but which doesn't exist in our present garden. These moments of recognition are not errors in our gardening memory, but glimpses of our multidimensional cultivation, evidence of the vast agricultural project of consciousness as it simultaneously tends infinite varieties of experiential reality. The myth of the eternal mirror offers another profound lens through which to understand this phenomenon. In this symbolic narrative, consciousness stands before a mirror that reflects not just the present moment, but all possible moments, all potential selves, all alternative paths that consciousness might have walked. Ordinarily, we focus on only the central reflection, the version of ourselves that we identify as real and true. But the Mandela Effect occurs when we catch glimpses of the peripheral reflections, the other selves that exist in the mirror's infinite surface. These peripheral selves are not separate beings, but alternative expressions of the same essential consciousness, each carrying memories and experiences that inform the totality of our being, even when they don't align with our primary timeline. When we remember something that never happened in our current reality, we are seeing the reflection of a self who did experience that event, who did live in a world where history unfolded differently. The narrative of the consciousness weaver presents, perhaps, the most profound symbolic understanding of this phenomenon. In this archetypal story, consciousness is portrayed as a master weaver, working at a loom that spans dimensions, creating tapestries of experience that exist simultaneously across multiple planes of reality. Each thread represents a moment of awareness, each pattern a lifetime, each completed section a timeline of experience. The skilled weaver understands that a single mistake or variation in one part of the tapestry doesn't require unraveling the entire work. Instead, the weaver adapts, incorporating the variation into a new pattern, creating beauty from what might initially appear as imperfection. The Mandela Effect represents moments when we glimpse other sections of the tapestry, other patterns that our consciousness has woven using similar threads, but arranged in different configurations. What makes this narrative particularly profound is its revelation that the weaver and the tapestry are ultimately one. Consciousness is simultaneously the creator of experience and the experience itself, the artist and the artwork, the author, and the story. When we encounter Mandela effects, we are experiencing moments of expanded awareness where we briefly recognize the broader scope of our creative activity, seeing beyond the single timeline we normally identify as our complete reality. The sacred drama of the soul's journey through the labyrinth of possibilities provides another rich symbolic framework for understanding these phenomena. In this eternal story, the soul embarks on a journey through a multidimensional labyrinth where every path represents a different version of life experience. Unlike a traditional labyrinth with a single path to the center, this cosmic maze offers infinite pathways, all leading to the same essential destination, the full realization of consciousness itself. The wanderer in this labyrinth occasionally encounters fellow travelers who appear familiar yet different, carrying memories of paths that diverge from the traveler's own route. These encounters represent Mandela Effect experiences, moments of recognition between different versions of the same soul as they navigate alternative pathways through the labyrinth of possibility. Each meeting offers an opportunity for expanded awareness, a chance to integrate wisdom gathered along different routes toward the same ultimate destination. Perhaps most significantly, this symbolic narrative reveals that the goal of the labyrinth journey is not to find the single correct path, but to eventually realize that all paths are simultaneously being walked by different aspects of the same consciousness. The confusion and disorientation that sometimes accompany Mandela Effect experiences represent the growing awareness of this multidimensional navigation, the soul's gradual awakening to its own vastness. The myth of the reality dreamers offers a final profound perspective on these phenomena. In this cosmological narrative, what we experience as physical reality is actually an ongoing collaborative dream shared by multiple levels of consciousness. The primary dreamers, vast cosmic intelligences, establish the fundamental parameters of the dream, while individual consciousness streams contribute details, variations, and personal experiences within the broader dreamscape. The Mandela Effect occurs when dreamers remember elements from previous versions of the dream, or when their consciousness briefly tunes into alternative dream sequences that are simultaneously unfolding. Just as individual dreams can shift and change while maintaining narrative continuity, the collective reality dream undergoes constant subtle modifications that most dreamers integrate seamlessly. However, some dreamers retain vivid memories of previous dream configurations, creating the experience of remembering something that no longer exists in the current dream sequence. These symbolic narratives illuminate the profound truth that underlies all Mandela Effect phenomena. Consciousness itself is far vaster, more creative, and more multidimensional than our ordinary awareness can comprehend. Every experience of reality incongruence becomes an invitation to expand our understanding of who and what we truly are, recognizing ourselves not as limited beings trapped in a single timeline, but as infinite consciousness temporarily focused through the lens of individual experience while maintaining connections to vast networks of alternative possibility. The profound revelations about reality's fluid nature and our multidimensional existence through the Mandela Effect cannot remain mere philosophical abstractions if they are to serve their highest purpose. These insights demand integration into the practical fabric of daily life, transforming how we navigate relationships, make decisions, approach challenges, and understand our role as conscious creators within the ever-shifting landscape of experienced reality. When we begin to live with the awareness that consciousness moves fluidly between parallel timelines, carrying memories and experiences from multiple versions of reality, our relationship with certainty itself undergoes a fundamental transformation. The rigid attachment to being right about factual details begins to dissolve, replaced by a more flexible and curious approach to truth. This shift in perspective creates space for deeper listening in relationships, as we become less invested in proving our version of events and more interested in understanding the different reality streams from which others might be operating. This flexibility extends profoundly into conflict resolution, both personal and professional. When disagreements arise about past events, shared experiences, or factual details, we can approach these discrepancies with the understanding that both parties might be accessing accurate memories from slightly different timeline configurations. Rather than viewing conflicting memories as threats to our credibility or sanity, we can explore them as opportunities to understand the multidimensional nature of shared experience. This approach often leads to resolution paths that honor the truth contained within seemingly contradictory perspectives. The recognition of our multidimensional nature also transforms how we approach decision-making in daily life. Every choice represents not just a single selection among alternatives, but a navigation point that determines which timeline stream we align with most strongly. This awareness invites us to make decisions based not only on immediate consequences, but on the quality of reality we wish to inhabit. We begin to ask questions like, which choice aligns me with a timeline where my highest potential can be expressed? Or, what decision resonates with a version of reality where healing and growth are most supported? This conscious timeline navigation manifests practically through what we might call intuitive reality testing, learning to sense which directions feel most aligned with our deepest truth and authentic expression. This goes beyond logical analysis to include subtle awareness of how different choices affect our energy field, our sense of inner coherence, and our resonance with the broader patterns of consciousness evolution. Many people discover they already possess this capacity, but have learned to override it in favor of purely rational decision-making processes. In professional environments, understanding the Mandela Effect can revolutionize how we approach creativity and innovation. When we recognize that consciousness has access to information and solutions from parallel timelines where problems have been resolved differently, we can develop practices that tap into this expanded resource base. This might manifest as meditation practices before brainstorming sessions, creating space for seemingly impossible solutions to emerge, or developing protocols that honor intuitive insights alongside analytical approaches. The educational implications are particularly profound. When we understand that memory is not merely recording but active creation, we can develop learning approaches that engage consciousness as a creative partner rather than a passive recipient of information. Students can be encouraged to explore their natural resonance with different subjects, recognizing that passionate interest often indicates accessibility to knowledge streams from timelines where they have already mastered these areas. This perspective transforms education from information transfer to consciousness activation. Parenting becomes an entirely different adventure when approached through this multidimensional lens. Children often display natural awareness of parallel realities, experiencing vivid memories of experiences they haven't had in their current timeline or demonstrating knowledge they seemingly couldn't have acquired through normal means. Rather than dismissing these experiences as imagination or fantasy, parents can support children in developing healthy relationships with their multidimensional nature while maintaining grounding in their current reality stream. The implications for healing and wellness are equally transformative. Many therapeutic approaches already recognize that trauma and limiting beliefs can be addressed by accessing alternative versions of experience where healing has occurred. The Mandela Effect understanding provides a framework for this work, suggesting that consciousness can literally align with timeline configurations where wounding never occurred or has been completely resolved. This doesn't invalidate the reality of past suffering, but opens pathways for healing that transcend the limitations of linear time. Physical health practices can be enhanced through recognition that our bodies exist simultaneously across multiple timeline configurations. Visualization practices, energy healing, and consciousness-based wellness approaches become more than metaphorical techniques. They become actual methods for aligning with versions of reality where optimal health and vitality are our natural state. This understanding can support conventional medical treatment while opening additional avenues for healing and wellness. Financial and material abundance takes on new dimensions when approached through multidimensional awareness. Rather than viewing wealth creation as purely a matter of external action and market conditions, we can recognize our capacity to align with timeline streams where abundance flows more naturally. This involves developing sensitivity to the subtle energetic qualities of different choices and opportunities, learning to distinguish between actions that align us with scarcity timelines versus those that support abundance realities. Perhaps most importantly, this understanding transforms how we relate to challenge and difficulty in our lives. When we recognize that consciousness exists simultaneously across multiple timelines, current struggles can be understood as opportunities for integration and growth that serve our expansion across all dimensional streams. The difficulties we face in one timeline often represent the shadow material that, when processed consciously, creates healing and integration across our entire multidimensional existence. The development of practical discernment becomes crucial in this expanded framework. While remaining open to the fluid nature of reality, we must also maintain the capacity to function effectively within consensus reality, honoring shared agreements about factual truth while remaining flexible about the deeper layers of meaning and possibility that exist beneath surface appearances. This balanced approach requires what we might call dimensional grounding, maintaining conscious awareness of our multidimensional nature while remaining fully present and engaged within our current timeline experience. This prevents the potential spiritual bypassing that might occur if we use multidimensional awareness to avoid responsibility for our choices and actions within our primary reality stream. Living with Mandela Effect awareness ultimately becomes a practice of conscious evolution, using every moment of reality in congruence as an opportunity to expand our understanding of consciousness itself, while remaining grounded in practical effectiveness within the world we currently inhabit. This integration transforms daily life into a continuous exploration of the infinite creative potential that exists within every moment of conscious experience. As we reach the culmination of this exploration into the profound mysteries revealed through the Mandela Effect, we stand at a threshold that has been crossed by countless seekers throughout human history. The recognition that reality itself is far more magnificent, mysterious, and malleable than our conventional understanding has ever dared to acknowledge. Yet this recognition brings with it both tremendous opportunity and profound responsibility. For once we truly grasp the implications of our multidimensional nature, we can never again pretend to be merely passive observers of a fixed, external reality. The journey we have taken together through these pages has revealed that the simple phrase, "If you can read this, you're already dead in another timeline," contains within it a truth so vast that it reshapes our entire understanding of existence itself. You are indeed connected to infinite versions of yourself across countless parallel realities, and the version of you reading these words represents just one facet of a consciousness so expansive that it defies the boundaries of ordinary imagination. In some timelines, different versions of your story have concluded, while in others, entirely different chapters are still being written. This moment of reading becomes a convergence point where all these possibilities briefly touch, creating an opportunity for profound integration and awakening. This understanding transforms the very meaning of life and death, revealing them not as absolute endpoints, but as transitions between different modes of conscious experience within an eternal, ever-expanding awareness. The death referenced in our title is not an ending but a transformation, the shedding of one limited identity to embrace a more expansive version of self. Every moment you release attachment to a fixed version of reality, every instance you allow your understanding to expand beyond previous limitations, you experience a form of death and rebirth that aligns you more closely with your infinite nature. The Mandela Effect, viewed through this lens, becomes far more than an interesting psychological phenomenon or curious glitch in consensus reality. It emerges as a cosmic invitation, a call from the deepest levels of existence for humanity to awaken to its true nature as multidimensional beings of unlimited creative potential. Each experience of reality incongruence, each moment when memory conflicts with recorded history, each instance when the familiar suddenly becomes strange, offers an opportunity to step beyond the confines of linear thinking and embrace the vast mystery of conscious existence. This awakening carries profound implications for how we choose to live our lives moving forward. When we truly understand that consciousness is the fundamental creative force within reality, every thought becomes a prayer, every belief becomes a command to the universe, every emotion becomes a steering mechanism that guides us toward specific timeline configurations. The quality of our inner experience directly influences not only our personal reality, but contributes to the collective reality that all consciousness shares. This recognition demands a new level of consciousness responsibility. If we are indeed active participants in the creation of reality, rather than passive recipients of predetermined circumstances, then every aspect of our inner and outer lives becomes a sacred practice. The thoughts we habitually think, the beliefs we unconsciously hold, the emotions we regularly entertain, the relationships we cultivate, the choices we make in each moment, all of these become acts of creation that ripple across dimensions, influencing not only our current timeline but the vast network of parallel realities where other versions of ourselves continue to exist and evolve. The practical implications of this responsibility are both humbling and empowering. We can no longer blame external circumstances entirely for the conditions of our lives, as we begin to recognize our own creative participation in manifesting these experiences. Yet this recognition also reveals our unlimited potential to consciously participate in creating realities that support the highest expression of love, wisdom, and creative potential for all beings. This expanded awareness calls us to develop what we might term multidimensional compassion, understanding that every person we encounter is also a multidimensional being operating from their own complex web of timeline experiences, memories, and consciousness configurations. The conflicts and misunderstandings that arise between people often reflect the different reality streams from which they are operating rather than fundamental incompatibilities between their essential natures. This understanding opens pathways for deeper empathy, more effective communication, and more harmonious collective creation. Perhaps most significantly, this awakening invites us to embrace what we might call conscious evolution, the deliberate participation in the expansion of consciousness itself through our choices, our awareness, and our commitment to growth and integration. Rather than allowing evolution to proceed through unconscious processes of trial and error, we can begin to consciously align ourselves with timeline configurations that support the highest possibilities for human development and planetary healing. This conscious participation in evolution requires developing new capacities for navigating multidimensional reality while remaining grounded in practical effectiveness within our current timeline. It demands the cultivation of expanded intuitive abilities, deeper self-awareness, and the courage to trust insights that emerge from beyond the boundaries of ordinary rational analysis. It calls us to develop relationships with a deeper wisdom that exists within consciousness itself, learning to receive guidance from the expanded versions of ourselves that exist across multiple dimensional streams. The transformational call that emerges from this understanding is both personal and collective. On the personal level, it invites each individual to begin the journey of conscious awakening to their multidimensional nature, developing practices and perspectives that support expanded awareness while maintaining healthy engagement with consensus reality. This might manifest as meditation practices that explore alternate timeline experiences, creative endeavors that channel information from parallel selves, or decision-making processes that consider the multidimensional implications of our choices. On the collective level, this understanding points toward the possibility of conscious species evolution, where humanity as a whole begins to operate from awareness of its multidimensional nature and creative responsibility. This could transform every aspect of human civilization, from educational systems that honor the multidimensional nature of learning to political structures that recognize the interconnectedness of all consciousness streams, to economic systems that support the highest possibilities for all beings across all timelines. The Mandela Effect thus serves as both symptom and catalyst of this evolutionary transformation, providing concrete evidence that reality is far more fluid and consciousness far more powerful than our current paradigms acknowledge. Every person who experiences these phenomena and begins to explore their deeper implications becomes a pioneer in the conscious evolution of human awareness, helping to birth new possibilities for individual and collective existence. As you close this exploration and return to the flow of daily life, carry with you the recognition that you are far more than you have ever imagined yourself to be. You are a multidimensional being of infinite creative potential, temporarily focused through the lens of individual experience, while remaining connected to vast networks of possibility that exist across all time and space. Every moment offers an opportunity to align more consciously with your highest potential, to contribute to the healing and evolution of all consciousness, and to participate in the greatest adventure that existence offers, the continuous expansion of awareness itself. The next time you encounter a Mandela Effect, whether in your own experience or in conversations with others, remember that you are witnessing not a glitch in reality, but a glimpse into the profound mystery and magnificent potential that exists within every moment of conscious existence. You are already awake. Now it is simply a matter of remembering how vast and wonderful that awakening truly is.